Hey Harley, hey Blaine. Hello guys.
Great
Hello.
to be here.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Two of my favorite commentators and guests, but I have to say, like, all of my guests and commentators are favorites. Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche.org. I'll have links to your websites and your X in the description below. And retired General Blaine Holt. I'll have the links to your stuff, including your Dangerous Intellectual podcast, because you are a dangerous intellectual podcast. And today, I thought we'd start off by talking about what's going on in Europe. And also, this is the first time that both of you have been together. You know, I do regular videos with Harley and Alex once a month, and I do regular videos now, it seems, with Blaine with somebody. It's like a Blaine plus myself and rent a guest. And
So I'm somebody today.
today you are somebody, Harley.
That's good.
Other days you're nobody. Today you are somebody.
I'm the wild card.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Holly, do you want to kick it off? Because you mentioned a couple of things with regards to Europe and Russia, and then we can follow on with you, Blaine.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, sorry, before you do, we're recording this on Monday, the 22nd of December. It's now 7 minutes past 5 p.m. UK time. Please, Harley.
Well, the first thing I'd like to point out is there was another assassination in Moscow today of a top Russian general, Savarov, who is deputy commander of the Russian armed forces. The same kind of MO, a car bomb, probably from Ukrainian intelligence, Budyanov. They've gotten a few of these Russian generals, and this was confirmed by the Russian Ministry of Defense. And it looks as though whatever else is going on, the war is going to continue. Now, the other thing I brought up with Rich before we started is the situation involving the censorship, the operations in Europe to silence the opposition. This time, the sanctions against Jacques Beau. General, I don't know if you're familiar with Jacques Beau. He's a very prominent Swiss intelligence official, retired. He was accused of
I've been watching him quite closely, Harley. It's an amazing case, and it's going to be replicated as they watch this go through.
Absolutely. And Jacques is a totally honorable man. What he insists on is how could he be a Putin mouthpiece when he's quoting mostly Western media? And this is a good test case. But unfortunately, our chancellor here in Germany, if you didn't know, I live in Germany. Our chancellor, Merz, who's one of the leaders of the Warhawks, defended the decision to sanction him. And he said, if you're going to go into that business, then you should realize you're putting yourself, putting a target on your back. And this, of course, riled up a lot of people in Germany. But people in Germany don't stay riled up very long.
Right. Wow. And just so people know, he is a former military or former intelligence guy doing what I understand was really smart, insightful analysis, and basically saying that European Union and Ukraine were going to lose, or Ukraine was going to lose, Ukraine was going to lose. And the European Union have just issued a diktat that he's lost access to his bank accounts, he's been deplatformed, he can't travel.
Credit cards.
His credit cards as well, and there's no right of appeal. This is Politburo stuff. But then I always knew that the European Union was a Politburo, which is why I voted for Brexit. Blaine.
Well, it's cancellation politics, and it's rather than allow a debate, especially now. Look, the situation, I've heard a couple of your podcasts recently, General, where you've made the same point. The war can't be won. There's not enough weapons that can be delivered to Ukraine to win the war. There is a chance to get a semi-honorable peace. But by continuing this, all they're doing is adding to the numbers of Ukrainian dead and Russian dead, plus keeping the tripwire for the possibility of an accidental launch of nuclear World War III. So the silencing of a respected intelligent analyst, such as Jacques Beau, is a very dangerous attack on the right of people to speak out. And Jacques Beau himself said that this is designed to show that nobody is safe from the censorship industrial complex.
It's very true, and it's absolutely an escalation in what I believe, and again, we can call them globalist City of London kids, World Economic Forum kids. They're all anointed as leaders in Europe by the same shadowy group. They have gone all in on this bloodlust to have a war with Russia. And it's honestly, I'm just looking at a lot of individuals who are playing with fire, trying to cover up a crime scene, and they're willing to do anything now, no matter how craven, no matter how anti-civil rights, they're willing to do anything to get away from what will end up invariably becoming a season of accountability. No matter what, after this war is over, and it will end, we are going to see calls, strong calls for an autopsy, for audits, for where it's already happening. It's already happening. You've got, he may not be my cup of tea, but you've got former CIA analyst Larry Johnson out there making very firm claims that he's turned in evidence to the Department of Justice in the United States on $48 billion worth of corruption and graft around this thing. And what you're right there in Germany, Harley, and I used to live there many years, and you're watching Germany being absolutely deindustrialized, ripped apart,
Yeah.
and them trying to convert it into some sort of war machine where there's not $1 to do it, and they're not even really serious about that. How do I know that? Because when you're Mertz and you say we're going to drop 50 billion on our defense, which he did in the Financial Times 2 weeks ago, you look at the disbursements. Well, the first thing they're going to lay down is down payment on a whole lot of new Leopard tanks. Tanks worked in World War II, but in a modern war, all that's doing is wasting money. And so why would they do it? They're just trying to stimulate their economy by any possible means. So they've now failed at their next attempt, which was to steal all the Russian money and monetize it. And what I believe is going to happen next, now that they understand, in this casino, the lights are coming up, the drunkards have been shown the door, and they're the ones left holding the bag that they had hoped that they would put into Putin's hands and to blame him for everything. So now they're making George Orwell a prophet. 1984 is here, could care less that whether it looks like democracy or not. We're going to zero and cancel out anybody who says anything positive about Russia. And they're already showing signs that they want to do this. They had at Heathrow over the weekend, an American was questioned for two of her former ex-posts going back years, like to 2019. And she wasn't locked up, she was just detained momentarily. But it's that chilling message of, we will do anything. So my number one concern, and it matches up with our friend Tom Luongo, is, do the desperate then go for the false flag option? We go ahead and refurb a Russian missile and blow it up someplace really inconvenient like Big Ben or something. And now we're all strapped into something that we can't get away from. Those are where I think the stakes are, and those are what I think that they will do.
Well, if I could comment on that, I think you're right that the desperation is palpable. If you look at Mertz floundering around trying to come up with an explanation of how he's going to have a sound economy when they are deindustrializing. Look, in this last year, the car sales in Germany of German cars to German buyers went down 25%. Truck and construction equipment sales went down 34%. Volkswagen has shut down several plants. They're short time in other plants. And the one company that's making money is Rheinmetall, and they don't have the ability to produce steel. How are you going to build tanks and heavy equipment without steel? And they're previously they were buying it from China, but now they're against China. So what they've done, and I think the other point you were making is right, they have no economic policy. The policy of the green zero carbon is a complete fraud. At the same time, they are cracking down on any investments that don't go into defense, and the credit is not available. The bond markets are going haywire. And the money, of course, is going into the stocks that are involved in the artificial intelligence, and AI is a major part now of the defense complex. So they don't have a strategy. Even worse, the idea that they could compete with Russia on the battlefield without the United States is, to me, one of the most delusional aspects of this leap from reality by the Europeans. Add one more point to it. None of the leaders are popular. Macron is at about 10%. He's had 4 or 5 governments collapse. Mertz is on a free fall. He's below 20% now. And Starmer, no one knows. I think, Rich, you've taken a magnifying glass to try and find his support. And what you're seeing in Germany and France and in the United Kingdom is the growth of support for so-called right-wing parties, which to me, I'm not sure Le Pen could govern. I'm sure Nigel Farage could. I have a little more faith in the Alternative for Germany because they have actually put forward some strategic ideas for reforming, or I should say, going along with Trump to normalize relations with Russia. If Germany wants to survive, it needs to have a partner in Russia. But the Merz crowd, the Social Democrats, have no interest in that. And even worse, I know you, General Holt, you had connections with NATO, worked with NATO, actually did a lot with NATO. You look at the European Union, von der Leyen, Kallas. These people couldn't organize a 2-car funeral procession.
That's very true. But, none of this is negligent or incompetence. It's absolute malevolence.
Yes.
It's absolute malevolence. And when you pick an unelectable Ursula von der Leyen for some post, or if you pick a Kaja Kallas, who was a prime minister in a country of, 20 natives and a dog named Rex, and now suddenly she's sitting there at the EU, and all of them have the same script cards, and so they're not selected for their brilliance. They're selected for their families, their backgrounds, their silver spoon pedigrees, and the fact that they can be trained with a dog whistle to say their scripted lines. And how do we know that? Well, I mean, just look over the weekend. All of them, Ruda, van der Leyen, Kallas, even Annalena Baerbock in New York at the exact same time with Macron and Starmer, all going back to the neocon trope of not only is Putin going to shut down all of Ukraine, but he's going to go on to the rest of Europe next. Well, if the Russian army can't get to the Dnieper River in 4 years, I think you can't have it both ways. But that notwithstanding, what we see is the elements of a blown strategy. And as a strategist, especially one that was rooted mostly in Europe throughout my career, I know this about war strategy. If your plan lacks simplicity, then you're in trouble. And for decades now, these globalists, whether it's been the planning of the pandemics, whether it's been the planning of the debt-based system crushing us, digital ID, CBDC, and how the world would react, using their center hub of the World Economic Forum to put leaders all over the world that would do the same thing at the exact same time. When you have a plan that is that complex, that relies on so many branches and sequels to go exactly your way, you're going to get into trouble. You're going to get into the law of unintended circumstances, or what we call second and third order effects. And then furthermore, if I was advising the Supreme Allied Commander Europe like I used to, right now I'd be saying, so their plan's not working. They had planned for this war to escalate into something much more, and they were going to somehow balkanize Russia with a failed Putin and Kremlin and take over 75 trillion in natural resources to recollateralize their Ponzi scheme. But that fantasy is now behind us, and Putin's onto them, and Trump is onto them, and so it's not working out. So what happens when a lion gets tossed into a corner with no way out? It reacts unpredictably because it never encountered the idea, after all of its arrogance and ego, that it would even be in this position. And so the concern is that their plan is blown and is failed. They are not even trying to hold up the semblance of any kind of democracy or care for their people anymore, or that they even fear a ballot box, because I think we all know that Europe has the same problem the United States does with election integrity. And so based on that, what are they left with besides the words they used over this weekend, which was, we're all going to have to prepare for a massive war like our grandparents and great-grandparents did. And you can see the run-up to these things. Mark Ruda, that rocket genius, he comes out with, we've got to be ready to take on Russia in a major fight because it's coming. Well, if they have a false flag and something bad happens and they blame it all on the Russians, then he'll look like a absolute genius. Ruda said this was coming our way. But that's not what's happening. And so if Europe's going to kick the three legs out from the NATO stool, meaning security, prosperity, and values, then I would advise I would advise the president, if I had the chance, that we need to seriously consider withdrawing from NATO.
Wow. Yes, and I have said on some of my podcasts some time back, I do sense that Trump at some point is going to either have the US leave NATO or seriously diminish its role. And this is before he published his national security strategy. Now, I want to posit an idea to both of you in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to let people know that Harley is not in his usual location, which is why his lighting is not so great, because he's traveling, but he's still got his bookshelf with him. He takes his bookshelf with him everywhere, although he says these are different books. I'm not so sure. And Blaine was at one point second in command of NATO, so got a lot of
the U.S. delegation. Yeah.
The U.S. delegation of NATO, so got a lot of insight into how that organization operates. Now here's what I'm going to posit. There was lockdown, and we were required to do certain things, and it was all in order to keep Granny safe. But at the same time, that's the pretense. This is what we need to do in order to defeat this evil, deadly virus, the worst thing ever. But at the same time, what it did do, there was a shift of wealth upwards. It destroyed small and medium enterprises. It's atomized society, and it trained people and tested people in compliance. Now, it might look like those are second-order effects, but actually maybe that's what it was designed to do. It was designed to begin the destruction of small to medium enterprises. It was designed to train people and test people for compliance. And it was designed to atomize society so that we wouldn't unite. So similarly, where the European Union is saying, listen, we need to go to war. We need to give money to Ukraine to support them in their war against Russia. Otherwise, Russia will come and conquer us and stomp on our heads. That's the pretense. Really, what's going on, they're using that as a cover for lining their own pockets and using that money to bring about the techno-feudal state where we have CBDCs and digital IDs, and we're all incredibly happy because we own nothing and we're eating insects. And that the conscription is actually to conscript people not for an external war against Russia, but an internal war against their own populations.
Well, Rich, I think you may have seen the articles I wrote on what was really going on with the Epstein affair. And let me just summarize that briefly, because it goes back a little further than COVID-19, and it goes back a little further than Kiev, Maidan Square, and so on. Since 1971, we've been living in an economy that's increasingly based on speculation.
Yeah.
And a reverse of the idea of physical economic value. And this is part of a strategy which is devised by the City of London. It includes all kinds of deregulation. It includes credit going into such things as junk bonds in the 80s, collateralized debt obligations in the 90s, and up to the 2008 collapse. Now it's going into artificial intelligence. The people who are running things are interested in money, not value. But there's another part to it. To them, the biggest problem they face is overpopulation, too many people. And this has been a long-term strategy. If you go back to something drafted by Kissinger in 1975, National Security Study Memo 200, I think it was. What does it say? The greatest threat to the United States in the future is population growth in the developing sector, because those countries will demand that wealth will be used for their own country. In other words, sovereignty. They're anti-sovereign nation state. And that's why we've seen all these moves toward globalization, the World Trade Organization, WEF, IMF, and so on. But they're not exactly geniuses. In fact, they're idiots, because if you increase the division between the wealthiest and the number of people, the largest number of people, you're creating more and more enemies. And in order to succeed, you have to have some form of demoralization of that larger population so that they won't fight. But what's happened is people are waking up. People are beginning to realize that this is an exercise in a suicidal exercise. The problem is they don't know what to do. People don't know what real wealth is anymore. You know, if you have billionaires flying around the world making money by producing things like pets.com or something like that, you know, these phony companies where they build them up with venture capital, and then the stock goes up, they pull it out, it collapses, the little guy gets stuck with a loss and the big guys get bailed out. That's what we're seeing, and it's breaking apart right now. The interesting thing is most of the rest of the world is rejecting this model, but you're not going to have, well, actually, what you should have is an alliance between sovereign states like the United States with India, with Russia, with Thailand, with Malaysia, with these developing nations that are now saying we have a right to determine our own future. And I think the Americans did that in the election in 2016 and 2024, but then they went back to their business. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the City of London, the Wall Street crowd, the Harvard elite, they didn't go back to having fun. They went back to continuing to drive to increase their total control. And so we have to have not just an awakening, but a deeper understanding of the strategic implications of where we're headed.
Thank you, Harley. Blaine?
Yep, I couldn't agree with Harley more on this one. And, you know, the territory that the intelligence communities were very, very good with language and using a combination of propaganda, information warfare, and propaganda and psychological operations. By branding people with language to use terms like tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theorist, or name calling like racist and whatnot.
Anti-Semite.
But if, whatever, take your flavor of the day, doesn't matter. But if you pull, so what I find in this awakening is people are discarding those terms now, which is, it's a little bit late in the day for them to do this, but I'm really happy to see it. But as you do that, what you have to do is go back. And you have to go back quite a ways and understand that eugenics is very real. It is extremely real. And it is a clear and present danger, not to the United States, but the world and its populations. And they mean what they say. And they write this all down. It's in the Great Reset book. It's in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And if you think that mass formation psychosis or brainwashing isn't really effective, go ahead and ask yourself why, as a world body, we would trust those who believe in eugenics and depopulation to develop life-saving vaccines from some sort of pandemic that could get us. It doesn't make any sense that people who would stand up, like Bill Gates, who said, the number one problem we have in the world is population size. Well, here's the intersection that they're driving to. They don't feel that they need us anymore. We're the worthless eaters. And in the worthless eater category is, how do you replace us then with all the things that these 500 million anointed who get to be remaining on the planet, those are their numbers, not mine. How do they take care of themselves? Well, they have a lot of slaves. That's one thing. But the other part is they believe that now we're in a technological world where AI, quantum computing, robotics all come together and can replace the useless eaters in their utopia, in their perfected world. And they've convinced themselves that, through gene therapies, blood platelet therapies, that they can live damn near immortal lives. And this is a religion. This is a cult. This cult believes this. What we're seeing at our level is the tactical and operational results of that cult's machinations. And I love what Harley said when he said, these people are incredibly stupid, but they're also incredibly dangerous, because when you're incredibly stupid and you're advocating for war with a modernized nuclear-armed Russia, you probably don't understand anything about warfare, and here you are arguing for it. So what we see is petulant little children, middle managers, you've heard me call them, Rich, who are playing with fire in a room packed with gasoline, just the way their shadowy overlords have told them to do this. But at the baseline, and that's where we get back to what Harley was saying about the Epstein place, there's a whole lot of the scant pieces of information that Queen Pam Bondi let us have over the weekend is confirmation that he was very involved in eugenics. He was very involved in the science of removal of mass swaths of people from the planet. If you think that it's not true, then just go ahead and ask yourself about every single element of society right now. So if I need a drug, I'll go get a vaccine. It's got mRNA in it. Wait a minute. If I have a pet, my pet can have a vaccine. It's got self-replicating mRNA, so the pet can vaccinate me. Wait a minute. If I look up in the sky, I can see airplanes. I'm a pilot, by the way, so I know the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail. I could see them spraying chemicals openly over us. Some of them contain some of that vaccine material, and then they contain glyphosate and bromide and aluminum, which is killing us. And then if you don't believe that, then you can go look at all of our ministries of agriculture, where the Chinese are only too willing to sell long-term killers in terms of cancers from their insecticides, which we're told are safe, effective, and harmless. In other words, what I'm saying is they're not culling the herd by one weapon. In any effective campaign plan, you don't present your enemy with one weapon on a battlefield. You get 27 of them. And so what I'm saying is they're already in their operation. What they didn't count on was Trump. And I'm not saying he's perfect, because he is riddled with traitors in his administration right now. And then B, they did not understand that not only would we waken up ahead of schedule, but we'd be pissed off. And I am talking to Australians who are talking about how do they create a black market in weapons there. I'm talking to Europeans who are talking the exact same way. We have the Second Amendment here. People are getting prepared for mass states of violence. And I'm sorry, that's what's probably over the horizon. Just getting back to Sasha Kreiner, our dear friend who has his red ant, black ant theory, and you put them all in the jar and you close the jar and shake them up, and what do? They kill each other. Well, guess what? That also meets the eugenics goal as well. And so the cast is thrown out there. Will Europe and will Europeans understand that it's time now to save themselves? They cannot look to their governments and their leaders as the method of being saved. That the grand bargain where they traded their freedom for security in Europe, they chose poorly. Should have held on to the freedom. But I think they're going to be forced to fight for it. And when you start looking at your kids and you understand that if you don't fight for it, what am I leaving to them? That's what these globalists don't understand, because they don't love anybody. They don't value people. They see them as impediments. And so that our strength is going to be our values, that we love our families and we want a better world for our kids, and we want freedom for our kids. They can't possibly understand that. That's the foundation upon which we build.
Well, we just saw that an example of that in Germany, where they tried to put through a conscription bill for all males and also females who turn 18 would have to register for military service. And they counted on the fact that the youth were interested in video games and drones and things of that sort, but would not be paying attention to the fact that there was a war going on. What happened is you had 90 cities, very large demonstrations of high school kids. And I know this because I have kids in high school. And my kids were not particularly political. They kind of listened to me once in a while and said, yeah, okay, Dad. But all of a sudden they were out in the street marching. And Meritz was completely shocked. And what happened, which is also interesting in terms of this question of waking up, is you had the so-called left and the so-called right come together. The Sarah Wagenknecht, which comes out of
Yep.
and she was marching side by side with the Alternative for Deutschland. And what does the government do? They talk about banning the AfD at the point at which the AfD is over 30% popularity in the polls. And
Right.
these kids who a year ago were marching in the anti-Alternative for Deutschland marches are now marching. They may not know it, but they were marching behind the program of the Alternative for Deutschland, which is no draft and no conscription when there's a war going on. So the awakening process is occurring. My concern is that it's a little bit late because you have too many people who have made too many compromises over too long.
Yeah.
And the ability to rethink, to become a critical thinker, maybe when you're in your 40s or 50s, maybe it's too late. But I'm hoping we can catch these kids who, besides all the silliness of the current culture and the fact that it's hard to pry a cell phone out of their hands, the idea of fighting a war against Russia and Ukraine in frozen battlefields with no support, that's something that does catch their attention.
Okay.
It does, and they're learning. I've got a lot more faith in Gen Z and Gen Alpha than a lot of people do. The reason is, and this is our opportunity, Harley, is they're looking to Gen X for guidance. They want the mentorship. They're scared. They understand, and they're watching kids curled up in a ball where the Ukrainian soldier has a cell phone and the cell phone's being used to track that drone right in on top of them and kill them. They're understanding that they've been sold a bill of crap. And, what I think I see, and I certainly hear it from the young ones that I talk to, is they're coming to us who were sent off to war for 20 straight years for zero reason, and came back home with a whole lot of combat skills, pissed off attitudes, some without some limbs and some not at all. And they're asking for answers, and we're giving them the answers. But what we're making sure they understand is that the garbage that they've been taught in these schools, gender affirmation, DEI, alternative histories, all these things, that it's hard for them at first when you say, you have been completely lied to. And while you were at school, as your parents, we had no idea that that was even going on until we got to peer into a Zoom camera and figure out that that's what was happening during COVID, when everybody said you can't go to school, you'll have to do it remotely. And so, look, I really do think that 2026 is the break point. It is the break point. This one's for all the marbles. Will the globalist vision of eugenics and utter control through CBDCs and digital IDs and social credit scores rule the day? Will that happen? Will there be some sort of Mad Max insurgency that rises up against that? Or will we take a look at being at the brink of a nuclear holocaust, potentially with Russia, and start to step back? Will Europe dump its globalist cretins? Will we in the United States do the same? I think in the United States, we're understanding now that there is no aisle. It's the swamp versus the United States of America, or what I call ROTC, rest of the country. Who will win out? We're going to learn that in 2026. But what I'm trying to help with here, Harley, as you can probably appreciate, is at my public speaking events, we all talk about Trump derangement syndrome. It's just get Trump, get Trump, get Trump. But there's another malady out there, and that's called TCS, Trump complacency syndrome.
Yeah.
Where the American goes, well, I voted for him. Everything's going to be fine now. And I think with this Susie Wiles-led insurgency against President Trump, and no season of accountability and being paraded nothing but evidence, we're drinking from a 12,000 gallon per minute fire hose with all this evidence of corruption and scandal and all of these things. We're not seeing the hammer drop. And that phenomena has MAGA Nation, America First Nation, waking up going, wait a minute. And so that's very, very good for us. I think it's very healthy because it does clobber Trump complacency syndrome. And we do understand that ultimately at the local level, we have to come together here on Main Street, as they do in the little dorpjes of Holland or the little villages and the Stadts of Germany.
Harley?
Well, I like your Trump complacency syndrome, because I've always asked, because I was a big defender of Trump during the Russiagate fiasco. I wrote about 30 or 40 articles exposing the role of the MI6 and the GCHQ in initiating the Russiagate, and then going through the Obama team of Brennan and Clapper and others. And so people said, well, you must really love Trump. And I said, well, when Trump makes a mistake, I'm willing to attack him to try and set him straight. And I think this is too many people had fallen into, either he's all terrible and we have to get rid of him, or we just have to let him do his job. I think it's clear now he's going to have a hard time doing it, because I fear, besides the neocons who still exist in the intelligence community, the defense, the Pentagon, the diplomatic corps, the other problem is we have the globalists in the economic sphere, like Scott Bessent. And these are people who are also pushing the same global policy of the City of London, basically the funny money policy, that if there's a blowout, we just have to print more money. And I think one thing we have going for us, if people will figure out what it is that this strategy of boom and bust is a big part of the problem. And people are so willing to hope that they'll get to be part of the boom that they ignore the fact that you can't just print money and make wealth. Wealth has to be something that can command physical value. This is the tradition of the founding fathers, the Hamiltonian banking system, Abe Lincoln's Transcontinental Railroad. This is what they're talking about now in the global South. And so what we're seeing is a potential blowout. But when you have a blowout, that tends to get rid of the illusions. And so the only thing is, do we have enough time to give people an understanding of what makes an economy really work? And what makes it work is freedom and creativity, unleashing creativity. And the way to unleash creativity is not to allow Epstein and Bill Gates and people like that to choose where the money goes and deliver it to the MITs and the Harvards and others, but to actually do it through the middle-sized corporations where most of the innovation takes place. So we have a lot to do to educate people, but I think what's also on our side is the fact that the economy is not going to resurrect itself.
It's not, and we've been living in a financially engineered economy since the fall of the dollar, with the gold standard going away.
1971.
Absolutely. And all by design, because what happened is the financialists took over and we financially engineered the economy. The only thing, we just watched silently as all the factories were closed because Bill Clinton told us NAFTA was good for us. And it was this globalized environment that Thomas Friedman extolled was going to actually result in great, wonderful things happening. And it was nothing more than P.T. Barnum's snake oil. But the point being is, you've got really decent men, macroeconomists like George Gammon. You've got Martin Armstrong. I just interviewed Bob Coleman on my own podcast for today. They all understand, like you do, that the only economy is goods and services, and the innovation and creativity of her people to make those goods and services. But the true leeches, the true enemy, are the financialists themselves. These are the ones who can go to those mid-level corporations that you're talking about and naked short sell them into oblivion.
Yeah.
I'm building my own technology company right now and guiding her through these straits. And one of the acquisitions that we're about to do, I had a bunch of financialists call me on the phone and tell me, no, we're this big bank, we're going to be taking that from you, and fights on. But in every case, it's chasing a multiple, chasing your assets. We will envelop them. You're to say nothing. Now, what I applaud Trump on is, although he's running around the world right now trying to stop World War III from happening, and I think in that realm he's doing a great job, but it's his peripheral vision. And on the economy, I think he's doing a very good attracting foreign investment to the United States. That's great. But the peripheral vision is what you're talking about, Harley. It's these folks in the admin that have other designs and other agendas. So while the president's focused on saving us all, which is noble, he's got financialists to his left that are all about digital currency and CBDCs. He's got the technological oligarchs that want a surveillance state. And none of these people has ever even read the Constitution, could care less about the Fourth, Fifth, and Seventh Amendments, don't care. And then on the right side, he's got all the neocons, and he's got the folks who want to see War Incorporated go on in perpetuity and want to make money off of this, while not giving a damn about what's happening in this country, let alone the fact that we have our own invaders. So if I was to advise the president right now, it would be like, the first thing is you got to build a perimeter. That's, and as military people, we're always good at saying that. If you don't know what to say build a perimeter. but the perimeter would be, you're going to have to fire most of the people in your admin right now, even the ones that you keep extolling as wonderful. If Kristi Noem is going to promote and give a Christmas bonus to the air marshal that was attacking conservatives not 3 years ago, you've got your answer. If Kash Patel's mostly worried about people getting mad at him about flying his girlfriend on a private jet owned by We the People, he's got a focus problem. If Pam Bondi's not going to do anything but color black lines all over evidence, we got a problem. So you've got to clean house, build the perimeter. And then the thing that I would give the president an A+ on, and Rich has heard me say it, and I'll stop here. It's all the marbles, and it's the war on the cartels. The cartels are the foundational block to everything illegal on this entire planet. They provide all of the money laundering, all of the illicit activity. They fund all the shadow banking. All these people who are in pretty suits on Wall Street who say, no, I'm an upright citizen and I'm just a really damn smart financial person. Nope. Many of them, from the Chinese Communist Party all the way to Davos and beyond, owe their livelihood to the vascular system that is the cartel. So the predicate is the drugs. Okay, good. That's good enough because they kill 70,000 Americans a year. But putting the squeeze on that crescent down there from Haiti to Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua, Mexico, that squeeze is causing them to scream into their phones to all of their clients, including the ones they thought that they paid off in DC. And that's giving us the intelligence we need to take the actions we need to take. If the president will see this through, that could be our shining glimmer of hope to right an incredible amount of infinite wrongs that we've been talking about today.
Harley, before you come back on that, and I would like you to, I recorded a video with Blaine and Ian Burlingame, who's ex-Green Beret Special Ops, and they blew my mind. And this is what they talked about how the drug cartels, not just the money from the drugs, but the structures that they have are used for trafficking children, women, migrants, illegal immigrants. And then
organ harvesting.
Organ harvesting. Thank you. And then also the money flows, the hundreds and billions, possibly trillions.
Trillions. No, they're trillions.
Trillions of dollars that those activities generate that flows through the banking system and controlled by the City of London and its proxies, and is then used to fund deep state activities and the rolling out of the City of London's globalist imperial strategies. So for those that haven't watched that video, go and watch that video. But Harley, I'd like you to respond to what Blaine said.
And that's what I used Epstein to track. Because if you look at Epstein, he got his start. Where did his money come from? It came from organized crime.
Right.
Wexner got his money from Meshulam Riklis, one of the old Lansky mob figures. What you're talking about in terms of the drug cartels and the money laundering and the arms trafficking and so on, Epstein was part of all of that. That money went into Michael Milken's junk bond operation. This is just one track that I went through. But I would say it's broader than just the drug cartels. It's the overall corporate cartel structure internationally, which in the 30s, they were the ones who funded the Nazis. The Steel Trust, the Rubber Trust, the Oil
Ford Foundation.
Yeah. That's what we're dealing with, the corporate cartels who through Walt Wriston, I don't know if you remember him, the former chairman of Citibank, he wrote a book called The Twilight of Sovereignty. And this was in the early 80s. This is what Brzezinski was writing about in Technocracy. This was the strategy of the higher so-called intellectual elites that were directing the policies of the cartels. They took it from the Nazis, and what they took out of it from the Nazis to try and make it more savory is they took out the anti-Semitism. But what they replaced it with was anti-humanism.
Right.
On human beings. And you mentioned eugenics. These are the people who funded the eugenics movement in the 20s and 30s and somehow escaped Nuremberg when the harder core Nazis were prosecuted. But their global strategy is to use the trillions of dollars. In fact, it's now actually quadrillions because it now includes derivatives contracts. It includes the whole financial innovation. And the reason I chose to do this on Epstein is because there's such a fraud that they were so embarrassed and angry about his perversion. His real perversion was that he treated everyone like shit. And he did that on behalf of bigger people who used him to do it. And if you then transpose that into what was being done with the financial system, basically turning all human beings into slaves, which is what the World Economic Forum was talking about. It's what the post-industrial society is about. The useless eaters, that's the term the Nazis had. So I think what you're saying is absolutely right, but I would say it's the broader cartel structure, which says that it's the corporate cartels that should run the world over and above sovereign nation states. And that these corporate cartels, the Great Reset that Klaus Schwab talked about and that came in after the 2019 meetings in North Dakota, the annual Federal Reserve sessions, what did they talk about? They talked about technocrats being selected by the corporate cartels to run governments and let the Congress and parliaments be essentially play acting. And that's what we have. Our Congress doesn't do anything. Well, it does bad things, but it certainly doesn't do anything to represent the interests of the people.
Yeah. And nobody fears the ballot box either. So because there isn't one. Look, we're at the intersection for humanity about what is it we want to do. And I am always going to be the optimist no matter what. And because I see reasons for optimism all over the place. The shock, the utter shock of COVID wiping out in the United States 350,000 small businesses. And then if you skip it up a level, you look at naked short selling wiping out a whole middle class of businesses. And then if you look at this thing called the PTAB, a lot of people don't know what the PTAB is. The PTAB is the Patent Appeals Board. This is where the biggest corporations, if they don't like that you have a new mousetrap, they go file an appeal against your mousetrap with all their massive attorneys and everything, and they just take your intellectual property away from you. We're always bitching at the Chinese about doing that. We do it right here to ourselves. So if conglomerate X that should have been antitrusted, vaporized decades ago, comes in and says, wow, you've got a gonculator. I didn't know you had a gonculator. Let me look at your patent. Oh, no, that's our patent. And they just go to the PTAB appeals board and they take it. So here's what I would love to also recommend in your list of endorsements, Rich, is a new documentary came out from a friend of ours, Stephen Eugene Coons. He has a friend, Ron Lynch, who just released the documentary Trust Me. And it's called watch.trustme.org. But the reason I'm pressing on that, I sent it to the White House this weekend. So I'm still the scrappy little ankle-biting chihuahua in their group. And they still listen to me from time to time. But I sent this 90-minute jewel to them because it encapsulates exactly what we've been talking about. But moreover, and this is why I'm an optimist, it gives the watcher tools for how to protect yourself in an age of financialists that are blood craven to engage in eugenics on you.
Okay, what was the name of that again? That film?
It's called Trust Me, and you can find it at watch.trustme.org.
Watch.trustme.org. Okay.
Yep, here it is. Wait, watch.trustmemovie.org. There, I just read it.
Watch.trustmemovie.org. Okay, well, I shall link to that. And Stephen's been on my channel a couple of times. Fabulous guy. And I do recommend people follow him on X and look at his Patreon because he does.
But do you see what's happening? We're all coming together. We're all coming together. I have watched Harley Schlanger for years now, even when I was back on active duty. And here we are meeting Sasha Kreiner. I'd always wanted to meet him. Rich is out there mixing it up. We got Suzuko Kinda. And not everybody agrees on everything all the time. That's okay. You should see EM and I on a good scotch and bourbon evening where we're really going at each other over China. But what I'm saying is there is a growing array of us graybeards that I would say are trying to help guide, mentor for these very, very rocky seas that are coming our way.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Blaine, just on that, I would never, ever have thought that this old school British lefty would be looking forward to conversations with a retired US Army general. For crying out. What has the world come to?
You're not. You would no respectful person would ever talk to an Army general. You're talking to an Air Force general.
Oh, sorry. Important distinction. Now, that's always been my life's ambition, to talk to a retired Air Force general. Guys,
not really mine.
We're going to have to finish up, right? Is there any last things you want to say before I finish us up?
Well, let me just mention one initiative that we're taking. This is the Schiller Institute. One of the things that allowed the shift into financialization was the fight against regulated banking. Now, I'm against a lot of overregulation, and there's no question a lot of things are overregulated. But banking is something that needs to be regulated. And especially if the banking is backed up by a non-governmental body called the Federal Reserve, which essentially is an agency of the private banks. And so it was the repeal of Glass-Steagall banking separation in 1999, which allowed the financialization to take over completely, which led to the dot-com bubble collapse, the housing security bubble, the repo bubble, the artificial intelligence bubble, and so on. We're fighting for a global policy of Glass-Steagall, banking separation. If you want to speculate, do it to your heart's content. But there should never, ever be a government obligation, which means the government taxing the people for private sector benefit. And that's something that, along with Rich's don't pay your taxes. I mean, these are the kinds of things we can do that will start having an impact. But look for the global Glass-Steagall, That's named after the 1933 bill that separated commercial banks and investment banks. And we need that.
I'm all over it. I'm all over it. And Harley, I would love to have you on Dangerous Intellectuals sometime and keep getting this word out, because we just got to keep this effort up, because we know that this can get to a very dark place, especially those of us who have been through a lot of crap.
Yeah. Well,
and we have been through a lot of crap.
We have been.
We have.
And there's still a fair amount of crap to go through, gentlemen, right?
But
if you're in the UK, oh, sorry.
More and more people are going to wake up, and we've all got strategies. And one of the things I would say to people in the UK is notaxforwar.com. It's a criminal offence to pay any tax of any sort to local or central government, and you can find out how you can withhold your tax and why it's a criminal offence. Go to notaxforwar.com, and then retired General Blaine Holt, U.S. Air Force retired general, right, is actually going to come and has agreed to do a video with me and with Chris Coverdale at some point, who's the anti-war campaigner behind notaxforwar.com, which I'm looking forward to. And then, of course, Harley, you and I will be together again soon with our good friend Alex, aka Sasha Craner. And we will, one of the things I do on this channel is I do mix it up. Oh, this person's a bit interesting. Let me put them together with this interesting person. And then there's this compounding multiplication effect of interest and intrigue and information. So please subscribe, comment, like, and follow Harley and Blaine. I'll have their links in the description below. And I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
very much. Thank you, Harley.
Blaine, it was nice talking with you.
Nice talking with you, sir.